Alright, so today I'm going to teach you how to make horsehair pottery in Blender. First we'll need some pottery to put the texture on. So I'm going to Shift A and add a circle. I'm just going to press S and scale it down a little bit. Tab into edit mode. I'm going to press E to extrude and Z to lock it on the Z axis. I'm going to press E and extrude it again. A little bit higher this time. I'm going to Control R and add a loop cut right here in the center. And right click. I'm going to press S and scale it out. I'm going to take this top loop, press E to extrude, Z to lock it to the Z axis. I'm going to press S to scale it out a little bit. I'm going to come down here at the bottom. I'm going to take these two bottom loops, press S and scale those down some. And I'm going to take the bottom loop and then press F to fill. I'm going to take this center and then press Control B to bevel it. I'm going to take this one and bevel that one as well. I'm going to press A to select everything, M, and merge by distance so that way we can bevel this bottom loop just a little bit. I'm going to take this one right here, Control B, bevel that as well. I'm going to press A and M and then merge everything by distance, and then I'm going to right click and shade smooth. I'm going to go to modifiers and generate a solidify modifier. I'm just going to leave everything as it is and Control A while hovering over it to apply the modifier. I'm going to select these two sharp edges that the modifier created, and I'm going to bevel those as well. I'm going to merge everything by distance again, just to get rid of these overlapping vertices. Alright, now we need to scale this down some. It's way too big, so I'm just going to scale it to an appropriate size. It doesn't matter, just something that's more realistic to real life so our texture looks right when we put it on. And after you get done, Control A and apply the scale. Alright, now let's set up the world. So I'm going to go to render and change this to cycles, and I'm going to turn the denoiser on in the viewport. And under the film tab, I'm going to check the transparency box. I'm going to go to the world, and for the background color, I'm going to add an environment texture. And I'm going to choose this brown Photo Studio HDRI. And under output, I'm going to make this a square by changing the 1080 to 1920. And over here, if you press N and then go to view, I'm going to lock camera to view and zoom in. And I'm going to just adjust this camera so it's kind of centered up on our pottery here. And it looks about good, so I'm going to uncheck that box. Alright, now I'm going to scale the camera down. Just press S and scale it down. It won't change the size of the actual view. I have the HDRI strength set to a 0.5. I'm just going to bring this over. I'm going to add a new material. You can rename this whatever you want. I'm just going to leave it as this for now. Alright, I'm going to Shift A and add a Voronoi texture. And I'm going to also add a noise texture. And with the node wrangler enabled, I'm going to click on the noise texture and Control T to add texture coordinate and mapping nodes. I'm just going to select both of those and Control J to put them in a box. Just move them off to the side. Alright, and I'm going to connect the color to the vector. And I'm going to Control Shift click on the Voronoi to preview it. And you can see if we put the factor to the vector, it gives a little bit of a different result. So we want the color. Alrighty, so I'm going to Shift A and we're going to add a color ramp. Put that right between that. I'm going to come up over here and plug the object coordinate into the vector of the mapping node. I'm going to just start adjusting these sliders on the color ramp. I'm going to just drag the Y over to there. I'm also going to change the F1 to distance the edge on our Voronoi texture. I'm I'm going to change the scale to 1.3. And on the noise texture, I'm going to change the scale to 9. And the detail to 7. I'm going to change the roughness to 0.489. Just a little bit less than the default. Alright, and you can see the effect of dragging that slider over a little bit better now. I'm just going to move these over a bit. Give us some more room. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add a gradient texture. I'm going to add another color ramp. I'm going to plug this up. I'm going to plug the Voronoi output into the vector of the gradient texture because I want the gradient to be where the lines are. And by doing that, it will make the gradient come out from the lines rather than across the whole texture. I'm going to add a mixed color node. I'm going to Control-Shift-Click on the color ramp to preview it real quick. Just drag that slider in. You can see how it's affected by the Voronoi. Preview both of them and you can see the difference and how the Voronoi is affecting the gradient texture. Alright, I'm going to plug the color ramp into the factor. I'm going to add a hue saturation value node. And the color ramp actually needs to be plugged into the color. I made a mistake when I was filming this at first, but I do fix it later. I'm going to add another one after that mixed color node. And the mixed color plugs into the color of the hue saturation value. I'm going to add another mixed color node. Slide these over. And the output of the first hue saturation value goes into the factor, and the second one will plug into color A. I'm going to add another one and plug the result of the last one into color B. This first one is going to control the gradient, the second one the base color, and then the last one is going to control the color of the lines. I'm going to take these two textures, select them and Shift D to duplicate, and bring them down here. I'm going to add a color ramp. I'm going to plug this in. I'm just going to drag this slider real close over to the black one. I'm going to take that output and put it into the factor of that last mixed color node. I'm going to plug the vector of our mapping into the vector of that one. So they're all controlled by the same mapping node. I'm going to Control-Shift-Click on the mixed color to preview it. Alright, we can't really see what's going on here because everything's kind of the same color. So let's go and change these colors. So on our first mixed color node, on color A, I'm going to make it this pale beige color. If you want to type in the exact same color, I have it up on the screen. It's going to be D9BE9FFF. And for the second one, it's going to be a little bit darker. It's going to be D9B98FFF. Okay, very slight difference, but it'll help the gradient color blend together. Over here on the second one, on color B, I'm going to do FFF3E7FF. It's going to be a very pale cream color. And on this last color, I'm going to just make it black. I'm going to plug that into the base color and then re-enable the BSDF to the material output. Now you can see these sliders are doing something. We can see it a little bit better. It controls the gradient, various things. Alright, so I'm going to just go ahead and plug those hue saturation values up correctly. And we'll be able to see those colors better now. Sorry about that mistake. Alright, so I'm just going to select all these and Control J to put them in a box. I'm going to come over here. Now this is really important for later. These scales, when you change one noise texture scale, the other one doesn't change. So we want to hook those together and make sure they all change at the same time. And the same for the Voronoi texture. And the Voronoi and the noise texture have a different scale, so we're going to have to do some math to make those match up. So I'm going to Shift A and add a math node and change it from add to divide. I'm going to plug the Voronoi textures up into the value. And for this first value, It needs to be the same as our noise texture 9, because that's the one we're going to be changing later on. So I'm just going to go ahead and put 9 here. And our Voronoi texture has a scale of 1.3, so we need to do some division. 9 divided by 1.3 is going to be 6.9230769. And you could add another math node to calculate that. Do the top value 9 and then the second value 1.3 to divide that and plug that up into the second value of this one. But I just did it on a calculator and just typed it in manually. Now you can see if we unplug these and plug them back in, it's going to be the same. So that way you know that your division's working correctly. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and change this mapping scale a little bit. I'm going to change it to 1.4. I think that looks pretty good for the size of our pottery here. I'm going to Shift A and add a wave texture and a color ramp. This is going to give our pottery a little bit of a bump. And I'm going to click on the wave texture and Control T to add texture coordinate mapping. And these are going to need to be separate from our original texture coordinate and mapping nodes. I'm going to add a bump node and connect the color ramp to the hot. I'm going to connect that normal into the normal of our BSDF. And here's what it looks like so far. I'm going to change the rotation on the Y to 90 degrees so we got these horizontal lines. I'm going to hook up the object into the vector. And the reason it's important to change this is because this is going to be a much larger scale, and I want to change these separately from our original texture coordinates. I'm going to change the scale to 300 and distortion to 2, and the detail roughness to a 0.7. I'm going to drag these sliders over. So now we can see we've got these little lines. Alright, on the bump node, I'm going to change the strength to a 0.1, so it's very faint and subtle. You can see these lines in here, and you can just play around with this to get a result you like. And this simulates those streaks from pottery that's been handmade on a pottery wheel. Makes it look just a little bit more realistic. Up here on our BSDF, I'm going to change the roughness to a 0.25. We can see those bumps coming through a little bit better. I'm just going to go ahead and change the strength to a 0.01 for now, so it's a little bit more subtle. I'm just going to adjust these sliders to just something that looks pretty good. You can adjust it to whatever you want. Over here under subsurface, I'm going to change the weight to a 0.15 to get it a little bit of subsurface. I'm just going to click and drag down and change all these to 1, because in real life, sometimes if pottery is really thin, it will have some type of subsurface. You can almost see light passing through it. So I'm going to come up over here and add an ambient occlusion node. I'm going to Shift A and add a color ramp. I'm going to plug this up. And I'm also going to add another hue saturation value so we can control the brightness of this later. And plug that up into the color. I'm going to add a mix shader node. Plug the output into the factor. Plug our BSDF into the bottom shader input. And then just plug this up into the material output. I'm going to select all these and Control J to put them in a box. And here's what we got so far. We can see now if we disable this by pressing M with everything selected to mute it, we can see the effect the ambient occlusion is having. It gives a nice little look. If we change this value, we can see the effect that we're going to be able to control later. Alright, now I'm going to add a glaze to this pottery. So I'm going to just change the roughness to a 1 to show you that this doesn't affect the roughness of the material. Go under coat, I'm just going to change the weight to 1 for fully glossy. I'm going to change the roughness to a 0.4. Just play around with it. You can see this changes the roughness of the coat, not the roughness of the material itself. I'm going to select everything except the material output and Control G to join that into a node group. I'm going to take this group input, just drag it over here, and now we can start adding some stuff into it. First, I'm going to add the second mixed color nodes B color. Then I'm going to add these two other beige colors. And this first color I added is going to be the base pottery color, so I'm just going to rename that. And this color A is going to be the first gradient color, so I'm going to name that gradient A, and the second one gradient B. Then up over here, this black color, I'm going to drag that over and put it into a socket as well. And this is going to be the color of the horsehair. So I'm just going to rename that. Drag this back over. I want to plug the first value of our math node as well as the two noise texture scales into the same socket. Since they're all the same value, we'll be able to control those with one slider. I'm going to also put in the roughness of both of our noise textures into the same socket as well, so we can control those with one slider. I'm going to do the same for the detail on our noise texture, so we can control that as well. Just plug those two into the same socket since they're the same on both textures. I'm just going to come over here and rename those to something appropriate. And over here you can also set a default if you want, but I'm just going to leave the default what we have plugged in so far. I'm just going to bring this on over. I'm going to add the value of both hue saturation value nodes. I'm going to call this mask 1 value and mask 2 value. I'm going to bring this over here, and I want to control the roughness of the texture as well as the subsurface weight. I'm also going to go ahead and plug up the coat weight and the coat roughness. Just rename those. I'm going to call this glaze and glaze roughness. Leave everything else the same. I'm going to bring this down to our bump node. I'm going to plug in the wave texture scale and the distortion. I'm just going to rename those over here. And if you don't have this menu pulled up, you can just press in, and it's under Group tab. Alright, so I've got those renamed. I'm just going to bring this up over here. We're going to add in our ambient occlusion. I'm going to take the value of the hue saturation value and plug that into the socket. Rename it ambient occlusion. Alright, there's one more layer of detail I want to add to this. So I'm going to Shift A and add a bump node. I'm going to plug in the first bump node into the normal of this one. I'm going to plug in the second Voronoi and noise texture color ramp into the height of this bump node. I'm going to plug that into the normal of our BSDF. That way it gives this horsehair a little bit of a bump to it. And this is too strong, so I'm just going to change these values to something appropriate. And just play around with what you think looks good. You can see it's given a little bit of a bump. You can invert it if you want. Just play around with the values. I'm going to go with a 0.03. I'm going to go and take this group input and plug the strength of that second bump node into a socket. I'm going to rename that bump strength 2 and drag it up between the ambient occlusion and the first bump strength. I'm just going to drag that back over, and if we hit tab, we can see our node group. We can rename this if we want, but I'm just going to leave it this for now. Alright, so here's what we got so far. And I'll show you a little bit of how this works. We got our base pottery color, our two gradient colors, and our hair color. We got our texture scale, the texture roughness, and the texture detail. Our mask 1 value, our mask 2 value, our material roughness, our subsurface weight, our pottery glaze, which is different than the roughness of the material itself. Our glaze roughness, so you can get more of a matte look if you want. Our bump scale to control how far these grooves are apart, and our bump waviness. And we have our 2 bump strengths, one for the lines and then one for the horsehair. If we put our glaze on, we can see that it takes away that bump a little bit because the glaze is smooth and the bumps are not. So the glaze just smooths over those bumps and gives it more of a realistic look. It's really interesting. We can also change our ambient occlusion as well. And here's just a little viewport render I did. And that's about it. I appreciate you for watching. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thank you.